Hey, I'm Luke. Here we discover albums that are truly vinyl worthy. In this series, we dive deep into the discographies of various artists, album by album, song by song, in the search for vinyl worthy releases. My criteria for a vinyl worthy album is simple. It must be a collection of tracks that I enjoy from start to finish, with no tracks that I wish to skip. If an artist features in this series, then you can guarantee that at least one of their releases is considered vinyl worthy. Let's jump right into it. The Blue Nile was a Scottish band formed in Glasgow in 1981, consisting of vocalist Paul Buchanan, who was also on guitar and keyboard, Robert Bell was on bass and keyboard, and Paul Joseph Moore was on keyboards and synthesizers. The band were known for being slow with their releases, putting out just 4 albums in 23 years, and with no sign of another in the last 21 years. Part of the band's story was how they were supported by Lynn, a local audio company who, upon hearing their demo for their debut, decided to invest in the recording of the album and gave them access to their recording studio. This is not the first time that the Blue Nile have featured on this channel, as it was because of Matty Healy and the 1975 that I even discovered them. It was during my research for episode 2 of this series that I discovered the Blue Nile. The Blue Nile song The Downtown Lights from Hats was an influence on the 1975 song Love It If We Made It. Alright, straight into it. 1984's A Walk Across the Rooftops. This is a great debut, and it's vinyl worthy. The first thing that comes to mind with this album is atmosphere. The eponymous first track is full of it, and I especially like the bass, the space, the pluck strings, and the strikes that we have. I mean, all of it is brilliant. The piano, the horns, Buchanan's vocals, it all comes together in such a package. But it's the second track in this album that really stands out for me, with Tinseltown in the Rain. Immediately, we are met with a synth that reminds to me of Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill and The Cure's Disintegration. 2 incredible songs, and Tinseltown in the Rain predates them. It makes me wonder if the similarities were pure coincidence or not. Buchanan says that they were recreating the sound of Glasgow with the passing by of the buses and the chitter-chatter of people passing by. For me, I get a Christmassy feeling from it, because tinsel comes out at Christmas, and there's the bells which remind me of sleigh bells. I also notice how the reverb on the vocals is a lot more wet on this track too, which is actually not the case for much of the vocals on the other tracks. So while Tinseltown may have been a major influence on others, I think the influence from Rags to Riches is obvious. The synth is very similar to The Who's Baba O'Reilly from The Who's Next 1971. With the next track Stay, I really like the bass line of this song and the guitar solo around 2 minutes and 30 seconds. On Easter Parade, I really like the piano, and the slower pacing along with the atmosphere makes this a well-placed track on the album. I love the choruses on Heatwave. The contrast of the busyness of the verses versus the chorus is masterful. I enjoy the line "Are we rich or are we poor? Does it even matter anymore?" in a Heatwave. It makes the song take me back in time to where aircon didn't exist. But I also feel some sonic dissonance going on, because while the song is about a heatwave, the feeling this entire album gives me is one of being freezing cold. It's just got an iciness about it. And the final track, Automobile Noise, it actually sounds like an automobile factory. The keys at around 1 minute and 10 seconds is the sound that reminds me of what you hear when an alert on public transport comes on, which is fitting because exit signs and subway trains are mentioned in the lyrics soon after. All in all, this is a great atmospheric debut album that I highly recommend. 5 years later, we get Hats. So this album is a smooth ride throughout, and much like their debut, it's an enjoyable, cohesive experience that I recommend. Some of the highlights for me include The Downtown Lights. For the 1975 fans, you can bet that I often find myself singing "Fucking in a Car, Shooting Heroin," saying controversial things just for the hell of it during the intro. It fits almost perfectly. On From a Late Night Train, the atmosphere is lush. The horns, piano and vocals blends together so well. On 7 AM, the thicker and grittier bass makes this for me. The guitar that comes in around 3 minutes and 18 seconds onwards gets my head moving. Tinseltown in the Rain really sets the bar for a pillar from the Blue Nile. While this album is fantastic, it doesn't quite have a standout track in quite the same way. Nonetheless, this is vinyl worthy, and I recommend you give it a listen. In 1996, the band dropped Peace at Last, and Oh dear, what happened here? Well, to me, it's like the lush instrumentation and atmosphere had been stripped out of this album, and the songs and lyrics were not strong enough to stand up on their own. The only song that I find comes close to their former glory from this album is Sentimental Man, which grew to be a keeper. I genuinely feel like my enjoyment of the band's first two albums are diminished after having listened to this album. I know that sounds really harsh, but honestly that's just how I feel. Take that as you will. And 2004's High is no different. She Saw the World is the only track that isn't a total disappointment. I do prefer High's return to synthesizers over the more acoustic nature of Peace at Last, but yeah, this is almost entirely a skippable album for me. Special shout out to Broken Loves, which reminds me of ABBA's I Have a Dream though. For the record, I really don't like ABBA. Controversial, I know. So Paul Buchanan says the band are unlikely to reform due to personal and professional differences, but hey, who knows? A few more mentions from the likes of Matty Healy and Taylor Swift and the band might be more in demand, and they may see it as an opportunity to capitalise on it. Thanks for watching this episode. Like and subscribe if you feel like it. Drop me a comment on where you agree or disagree, or share something interesting that I may have missed. Alright, peace and love, bye 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 bye.